Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight for our special meeting this April 1st, 2013. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before you sit down, if you could remain standing for a second, Dick has an announcement, please.
I just wanted to ask if you would give a moment of silence for a resident that just passed away yesterday in town, John Ranella. He has served for many years in our town on the Recreation Committee, the Finance Committee, and several other committees. And so maybe we would give him a moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, folks.
And we certainly wish his family the best in this time of sorrow and need, so. All right, couple of housekeeping issues first. First, an announcement that the cable TV called today and asked that I state at the beginning of the meeting that CCA TV computers are down. The meeting will not be aired live, but the meeting will be aired as soon as the computers are back up, okay? So don't anybody get concerned about that. The other inquiry I wanted to make is, did you guys get your power back over there? Okay, all right. Tonight we have with us Mr. Greg Corbo and Mr. John Goldrosen from the firm of Copeland and Page. They are here because we invited them and asked them to come down and kind of lead us around the legal issues on this and maybe provide us with some options. So the problem with that is that I was able to meet with them and Mr. Franny was able to meet with them, but we couldn't have a third selectman, fourth or fifth, because then it's a quorum and it's a meeting. So what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to go into executive session. I promise you it will be very, very quick. And then we'll be right back out to start addressing the issue with you. In the meantime, I don't know, Jim, I don't know if you have a spokesman that you want to speak, some people that,
I imagine there's a couple people that are.
okay, all right. What we want to do is we want to keep it to the facts, okay? And we don't want to go over the same thing again and again and again. We know it's a quality of life issue, okay? So trust me, please, believe me when I say that we are aware of that. We are very sympathetic to it, and, you know, there's no need to state that 100 times, okay? So, having said that, I move that we go into executive session pursuant to Section 3 to discuss potential litigation with respect to the solar project off Purchase Street, because discussing the matter in open session will have a detrimental impact on the town's litigating position. And I hope you folks can appreciate that. Give us 10 minutes, and we'll be right back.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, roll call vote, say aye.
Aye.
Sarah says aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. We'll be back in 10 minutes, okay? Tonight's meeting, we want to allow you to express your opinions. We want to take as much information down as we can so that we can research and dissect this every possible way to see what, if anything, can be done for you. We have some members of the town staff here tonight. We have Mr. Robert Tinker from the Board of Health. We have Mr. Will Sinclair from the Planning Board, and Mr. Jack Hunter was here. It's probably in the area somewhere. This is not designed to be a attack on anybody, okay? Just come up, state the facts, give us what information that you have. No yelling, no screaming, no shouting. Everybody please conduct themselves professionally. I think you would take away from your cause if you did otherwise, so. Having said that, do we have a speaker who would like to come up first? Yes, honey.
My name is Chris McGurthy, and I live at 11 Captain Hall Road in Middleborough, Mass. I've been up here pleading my family's case regarding this array more times than I would like. I'm here again to voice my concerns regarding the effect this array so close to my home will have on my children's health. As many of you know, my oldest boys, Michael and Bobby, both have deep brain stimulators. When this whole thing started, you hired Glenn Brecklowitz to provide a peer review to answer our questions and address our concerns. I invited Glenn and Noah into my home to meet Michael and Bobby and the rest of my family and to learn about us. Many of my neighbors were also there to discuss their concerns. Glenn and Noah listened politely to our questions and our concerns, and they wrote their peer review. I wonder, since they are both pro-alternative energy, Glenn makes his living in the alternative energy field, who exactly was there representing our concerns and our side? What about a peer review for us? And to remind you, Glenn didn't fully agree with the plans as presented. Glenn's review never answered my questions. I wanted to know the long-term exposure to an array like this over many years for someone with deep brain stimulators. I wanted him to show me the studies done regarding a solar array this size, so close to homes. I asked to see a study on the long-term exposure over many years to someone like patients with deep brain stimulators. He could not. The studies he produced were based on short-term exposure, 20 seconds, exposed 6 times. This does not compare to someone living next to this array for many years, being exposed to up to 24 hours a day. The more I read from Glenn's paper, the more concern I have, not only for Michael and Bobby, but also for my younger boys, Matt and Nick. In 5, 10, 15 years, are we going to find out that the long-term exposure isn't healthy for anyone? I have copies of my letter I read here many months ago stating Glenn's sources and mine, if anyone really cares enough to read it or wants to hear my facts again. I feel the leaders of Carver were so determined to make Carver the green capital of the state that they put blinders on and went full speed to accept this array. You need to stop this process that you have allowed to happen and make sure the residents here will be safe, all of the residents. Many of our surrounding towns like Kingston, Scituate, Hanover, Falmouth, and Fairhaven are finding out the hard way that the proper studies were not done before they allowed the wind turbines now those towns are facing lawsuits and are having to do the proper studies regarding the effects of something like that in to their town and its residents. There's also concerns in Bridgewater and their solar array and the possible well contaminations with the materials used to support their panels. Glenn's study addressed what the panels are made of, but not what the posts going into the grounds are. And what about our well water? To be honest, we have also had many different companies pick up and drop this project. I do not know exactly what the plans are or what kind of materials they are going to be using to make them. My concerns have not changed. I feel no one here cares about my children's health and their future except for my family and my neighbors. How many of you can honestly look me in the eye with a clear conscience and tell me that my children's health will not be affected by this array going up behind my home? The information to calm my fear is not out there. The long-term studies have not been done yet. My kids will end up being the guinea pigs for the long-term study, and at what cost to my kids?
I thank you for that, ma'am. Do you have a copy of that you can leave with Elaine so we can give?
And I have my original letter that states
Okay.
Glenn's points and
So we can give it to council and they can take a copy with them. Young lady, you had your hand up. Come on up. Please state your name and your address for the audience.
I'm Lauren Todd from 3 Great Meadow Drive, and I just wanted to say solar panels belong in industrial areas, not in our neighborhood. I collected 41 signatures regarding this horrid idea. 1,000 trees that we need to breathe have been already cut down. Our oxygen levels are going down. There is no privacy, and it's lowering people's property. The lights from this project will be blaring through our windows. After this, solar might be in every neighborhood. No Borrego.
Lauren, you're a brave little girl. You're a very brave little girl, and your parents should be very proud of you. I think you have hit some real key points there.
Thank you.
Would you like to leave a copy of that with Mrs. Weston?
Lauren, how many signatures did you get?
41.
I'm impressed. Maybe some of the campaigns could use you.
3 more and you can run for office.
That's it, yeah.
Good job.
Thank you, Annie. All right, please, next. Speak into the mic so everybody at home can hear you.
Sure. I'm Suzanne Coyle. I live at 25 Captain Hall Road in Eastwood Estates in Middleborough. First of all, I want to thank the Carver Board of Selectmen for calling this special meeting and allowing the community to voice our concerns regarding this solar installation. None of us are opposed to solar power or any form of alternative energy. Our planet needs it, and we need it. The town of Carver has recognized this and is commendable in its efforts to advance the cause of green energy. The town's current community development plan, published just January, recognizes the need to be proactive in aligning its sustainability plans with those outlined by Governor Patrick in his Sustainable Development Principles published in 2007. The current 330-panel site along Route 44 is an example of thoughtful implementation of these principles. In a commercially zoned area in view only of passing cars, this installation utilizes land in a way that minimizes disturbance of the town's rural character and natural resources and minimally affects the quality of life of its nearest residents. This proposal in Great Meadow is very different. This proposed installation is more than 12 times larger than the Route 44 installation. It directly abuts residential homes in Carver and in some cases by less than 20 feet. It is in view of many residences of Eastwood Estates and Middleborough. In the quick progression of the construction, 7 acres of trees that have been an integral part of the rural character of this neighborhood are gone, the very rural character that the town officials have stated they seek to preserve. The water filtration that the trees provided for our wells is gone. The protection from wind and storms those trees provided is gone. The habitats the trees provided for local wildlife, gone. I propose also that in Carver's haste to approve this project, it has ignored one of the governor's sustainable development principles, and that is principle number 2, to advance equity. In the governor's principle, he states to promote equitable sharing of the benefits and burdens of development, to provide technical and strategic support for inclusive community planning and decision-making to ensure social, economic, and environmental justice, to ensure that the interests of future generations are not compromised by today's decisions. This project does not promote equitable sharing of the benefits and burdens of development. Rather, it unfairly targets a single neighborhood, one that the town officials have identified in the community development plan as one of Carver's, quote, most distressed neighborhoods. This project has not involved, quote, inclusive community planning and decision-making to ensure social, economic, or environmental justice. Rather, the planning and decision-making has moved forward with very little regard to the concerns of the immediate community. The project will adversely affect property values in the area, if it hasn't already, which is not economic justice. And the destruction of a pine forest is questionable in the benefits the solar field may provide. And is this project ensuring that the interests of future generations are not compromised by today's decisions? When a neighborhood is being recreated, where the adults want to leave and the children may not want to come back, there are better places for this scale of project, places that have already been identified by your solar bylaw subcommittees, locations that are appropriately zoned and not carry with it the scar of unpopularity and questionable decision-making. You all have a difficult job. To coordinate and facilitate the sustainability of all that makes up a town is a great responsibility. It is possible in this process of progress to make mistakes, but hopefully it's not too late to reverse this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Would you have any problem leaving a copy of your remarks with Elaine? Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman, anybody who needs to turn those in, we'll get copies back to them.
Sure.
Before they leave.
Yep. It'll just help give us a reference point for all of the issues
Give you back the originals
later on.
before you leave, yeah.
Just as a point of clarification for our audience at home, I know you may be questioning why we have some Middleborough speakers here in a Carver Town meeting, or Selectmen's meeting, but this is a joint neighborhood split between Carver and Middleborough, and it impacts all of these people there. So they have nobody to represent them other than the Board of Selectmen here, and so that's why they're included in this process. Who else would like to come up and offer us something? Jim?
James O'Brien, 4 Great Meadow Drive. I would also like to thank you for this opportunity. I know that we spoke last time a little bit, and you opening this up to the community is very appreciated, because this is something that is a community issue. It's not a neighborhood issue. And just to make something clear before I go any further, two things. One thing that I think there is a lot of misconceptions about, this is not an anti-solar campaign. This has nothing to do with being against solar. This is all about the proper placement of it. And as a member of the Solar Bylaw Committee and someone who's been involved in this for at least a year and a half, I feel like I have a pretty good grasp of what's going on and who does know what's been going on around here. And there are a lot of things that have been going on. This is about a community issue where we worked hard to come up with something. And this was a committee that worked for a year and a half on a bylaw that never even got presented to the town the way it should have. Because it was modified, which is very allowable on the town meeting floor, before it even got presented as the way it was supposed to be. And that agreement that we came to as a committee is what was called a compromise, okay? It didn't give everybody what they wanted. What it did was make the best suitable process possible and take away as many of the variables as it could to stop things like this from happening and from being allowed. And as a committee, from two different perspectives, we found a middle ground, and that middle ground got ignored at the town meeting. Fine, it was passed, and this project was grandfathered in, and that's one of the problems that we have the most issue with. The fact that the planning board was approving projects without a proper bylaw in place, knowing that one was necessary, and they continued to approve projects. And I know there are a lot of people that live around the neighborhood that say, it's gotta go in somewhere, and it's gotta happen. Well, you know what? It doesn't directly abut the back of my property. I'm not here because the back of my property is affected. I'm here because I have neighbors that are affected, and I care about my neighbors in my neighborhood. And I've stood on their back porch. And this bylaw, which is based on a state bylaw that says that a town will not prohibit or unreasonably regulate solar installations, has been presented with clear, unreasonable regulation by allowing it this close to property lines. My neighbor's yard is 20 feet from where this project starts, 20 feet. His house is more. They used his house as a zoning buffer. So they decided the distance from his house as opposed from his property line. Now, a 6-foot fence is proposed. So my neighborhood is made of split-level ranch homes. And when you stand on the back of a split-level ranch, you know what a 6-foot fence is gonna do for your view? Absolutely nothing. So residents who have lived in this community and supported this community and paid taxes in this community for 20 to 30 years are going to sit there and look at a sea of solar cells for the rest of their lives in this community. Because I'll tell you one thing they're going to have a very hard time doing, selling that home. And this community disregarded the voice of this neighborhood who has spoke up from the very beginning that this is wrong. Our planning developer said there is nothing that we can do about it as residents. How are we represented and supported that way? Is all we've ever done is look for reasonable regulation and reasonable support. And there isn't anybody that I've spoken to that feels that could stand up on that person's porch and see this as a reasonable regulation. There was time to do something about this. But looking at the community development plan that was mentioned a little earlier, it kind of shows that we are targeted for green development projects and that our neighborhood is being grouped and targeted for this kind of progress. That's wrong. And it should be changed. And how that's going to happen, I'm not sure, but I hope that this board can make some decisions tonight and not walk away with rhetoric that doesn't do anything. We need to make progress here because I don't want my neighborhood to be like those people in Kingston that have flickering lights and sounds that nothing can do about. Can you imagine what 4,000 solar cells is going to sound like when it rains? Right? There was nothing proven in Glenn Berkowitz's peer review. It was all speculation because there is no real evidence. But they said that the burden of proof was on us to prove that it was going to be wrong, as opposed to them proving that it wasn't. That is not justice, and that is not right. And we did not have anybody defending us. We had the town paying for others who were on a green agenda to put forth their agenda with what they were doing. We stood up and we spoke the best we could. We were belittled and berated. And again, that didn't happen in the best way. But the facts of this case are very clear. Nobody agrees that this is the right position for this. If you stand on the neighbor's porch and look at this, is not about going against solar. This is about placing it properly. And we worked hard as a town to be able to do that. And people should be aware that this isn't the only project that's going to come to controversy with that. There is an approved project on the paddock bog right here down in the middle of downtown. This is not just about my neighborhood. This is about Carver. And this is about making sure that as a community we do things the right way. Because there's no way that you're going to be able to set up that bog with a solar field that's not going to be a distraction of this town either. This is not right, and there needs to be a way to prevent this. And I hope that this committee can come up with some sort of plan or some sort of agenda to start to make that happen. Because I tell you, right now, they were starting to put the footings in for the cells already today. They are moving at a very rapid pace, and they will not slow down. And something needs to be done about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Before you take off, anybody on the board have any questions or anything? Want to ask anything?
Can we say something?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Mike. Just for the record, I wanted people who may not have been involved in this in the past, but have just recently gotten involved. I had a couple of people talk to me today about this project, and they were very surprised to learn that there had originally been an earth removal permit on the site, which is most of the site, and it's pretty torn up, sort of a moonscape. So I just wanted that piece of information to be out there. And I also want to say that this particular project, as someone pointed out, is not the first solar project that's been proposed there. The first one, Mr. Ward and I won't speak for him except to say that on the first project, we actually went to the developer separately, individually. They needed something from the town on that project, and so we had some leverage. They needed a power purchase agreement from us. This was quite a while ago. And they needed a tax break. And this was, again, that original 7-acre proposal right up against people's backyards that neither one of us liked. And that developer walked. So I just want you to know that it's astonished me, and I can't speak for anyone else, that this current developer's brand new person managed to come up with the money. It must be horrendously expensive. But again, in that particular case, we had some leverage, which we don't really have at this point. But there may be other things that can happen.
Borrego Solar is a national company that doesn't look for tax credits because they buy their cells at a very cheap rate and it can install them without the tax break.
Yeah.
And it's still the same land developer regardless of the company that's proposing this and presenting this.
That's correct. Yep.
So, either way, this has been moving forward in a plan. And then in that context, the land developers, within that time of the first proposal and this one, have put out 3 different housing development proposals. And most of the people in my neighborhood, as well as the people throughout this town, thought, well, that's all over. That's not going to happen because they're putting houses in over there. And that was proposed 3 different times, none of them moving forward in any particular way with the planning board. Yet this went in, and within weeks, they were moving forward very quickly. And that's how it's going to continue to go unless we do something about it. We don't want to be a poor, depressed neighborhood because that's not what we are. And I'm proud of my neighborhood and of this community, and I'd like to remain proud of that by them doing something to stand up for the right thing. Mr. Franey, you mentioned last time that there were lots of things in this town that are happening that people are unaware of, and that's true. But you know what, Jack? Sometimes you got to take a stand and make things stop.
I don't really know how the Great Meadow area was classified as the blighted area. I live on the edge of it, and I go walks down there every weekend, and it's a nice neighborhood. So I don't know who gave it that designation, but I don't think it ever came before the Board of Selectmen.
Well, I think that's something that we should discuss in a further time, because I think who created this community development strategy is something that we should be looking at. Because if you go searching for it on the website, it's not easy to find unless you know the name of it. It's tucked away in a very convenient place.
Well, we're the chief executive officers. Anything like that should be coming before us.
I agree 100%.
So I'm a little bit disappointed and surprised at that.
Again, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's a separate topic, discussion for another day. Let's stay focused on the solar project.
Well, I think, Mike, the reason that I think it associates with what we're doing right now is because it does target our neighborhood, and it clearly says for green projects.
Right. That may be something that you want to use in the appeal, though, James, when you go to the ZBA. I mean, I don't know, but there may be something that you want to include in that. So, any other questions from the members of the board? Helen, you have anything?
No, I talked with James and a few of the neighbors in length over the weekend. But I agree with you on the community plan as well as the open space plan, that I think we need to relook at that and maybe be a little bit more cognizant of putting neighborhood names in there. And I encourage the neighbors throughout Carver to read these plans, because it is a much bigger picture than Great Meadow of what is happening. And James is absolutely right that there's lots of plans to change our neighborhoods in ways that you would be quite surprised about. Some good, some not so good. But, you know, between the school issue and now this, we have all got to start being more aware of what's going on in this town. So I agree with the open plan. That's why I got involved, guys. That's why I ran. I am just fairly new in the selectman position. So a lot of these decisions had been made, but I talked to a lot of you before I ran. And I want just let you know that I'm going to continue to support from the legal standpoint that the Board of Selectmen can, to be there for you, to walk you through this. So,
Thank you,
I'm
Helen.
with you. You're welcome.
I might at this point say, I am very concerned with our neighborhoods. I am. I remember right from the get-go thinking, if my house was one of those 3 houses on Great Meadow Drive, I would be upset. So I have not supported this right from the get-go. If we had our bylaw in place, that 200-foot buffer, you wouldn't have built a single panel on 6 acres because it won't fit. It just won't fit. So I'm hoping from this point on that we can come up with something which is going to do something for your neighborhood and our town.
To that extent, Mr. Ward, the solar bylaw was created after. And I just want to be clear that the state law is not a blanket statement that allows by right wherever anybody wants to put it without any form of regulation. That's not what it says. And
Yep.
I couldn't believe a legal advice that would say that it was, because it says that you cannot unreasonably regulate it or prohibit it. It doesn't mean that you can't prohibit anything at all and they can do whatever they want. So when we have existing town bylaws for industrial projects, and if you look at the building permit, regardless of how people want to classify green, regardless of how people want to classify solar, it is checked industrial. It is a product that is made. It is an industrial product. And what the law states is that it cannot be unreasonably regulated. We have bylaws in this town for industrial projects, and this project does not meet those regulations, regardless of the bylaw that we created. It doesn't even meet our pre-existing laws and regulations. How is that reasonable? How can 20 feet from somebody's property line, 4,200 solar cells, be within somebody's reason in an agricultural rural neighborhood? I cannot speak as a farmer, but if I was, I would not promote this in any way whatsoever.
What do you think this does? I mean, this gives farming a bad name.
I agree.
Through you, Mr. Chair, do
Yes,
you
ma'am.
think this is a good opportunity for our town council to share with the residents some of the ideas that we have in terms of moving forward, or should we keep on hearing residents?
What do you think? Would it
Because
be appropriate for you to
kind of
interject something now,
elaborates
Mr.
on
Corbo?
what you're referring to, James.
I do know Mr. Tobolsky has a statement to make.
But,
also.
Mr. Corbo, actually, what you just brought up has been discussed, James. You know, we're checking every avenue, every venue that we can, and Mr. Corbo may be able to give a brief explanation of, or reiteration of what you just stated.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, folks. My name is Greg Corbo from Town Council's office at Coleman and Page. And yeah, I do want to just try to clear things up tonight with respect to, you know, what we think the law is as it stands today with respect to solar. I think what you have here is a classic example of the law struggling to keep up with the demands of modern technology. These large-scale, solar projects are relatively new, and as is green energy generally. It's something that the state is looking to promote, and so they did recently put in an amendment to the State Zoning Act to give certain protection to solar projects. And as the gentleman just pointed out, what that general law says is that no zoning ordinance or bylaw shall prohibit or unreasonably regulate the installation of solar energy systems or the building of structures that facilitate the collection of solar energy, except where necessary to protect the public health, safety, and welfare. So the question that is coming up is, what does that mean in the context of the Zoning Act? The general rule is that where a use is not specifically allowed under a zoning bylaw, it's considered prohibited. Yet this language suggests otherwise. This language suggests that you can't prohibit something unreasonably or not to further public health, safety, and welfare. So when we first got involved in this, it was with respect to the efforts to put the zoning bylaw forward at town meeting. And we gave an opinion at that time that if town meeting did not act to pass a solar-specific bylaw, that there would be risk. And that risk would be that a developer would come in and try to put a project in a zone other than the industrial zone or wherever they might like. And the problem is that the courts have not yet had an opportunity to give guidance on this. And what exactly does reasonable regulation mean? So what we gave the advice was for the town to act conservatively, to adopt a bylaw so that it could protect itself going forward. Now, of course, what problem that creates is that how do you deal with projects that got in before the bylaw went into effect? And that's the situation that we're dealing with here now. And so, we've discussed this with the Board of Selectmen, and, we're dedicated at this point to working with the building inspector and working with the Zoning Board of Appeals to assess this project and to determine whether this is a project that should be cited where it's cited under either the new bylaw or the bylaws as they existed before. I can't sit here today and tell you how a court might rule on something like that, but I can say that, you're not powerless. It's not a black and white issue of if you have no bylaw, it can go anywhere it wants. But we're prepared to give advice and guidance to the building inspector and the ZBA, and if necessary, let the court decide what the proper interpretation is.
In that context, I'd also say that there are many communities out there facing the same issue. And I know that when you look at many of those communities, the planning boards have postponed all decisions until they've established the proper bylaw to deal with that. Ours continue to approve without that, knowing that it was necessary. And that's where I see the true problem of this. That we would not be facing these issues and we would not be having these issues if this was done properly from the beginning. And it's not like this was a sneak attack or a surprise that nobody knew about. The people that let this and allowed this to happen knew that this was coming. This was not something that came out of the blue. It was a clear path, it was a clear direction, and that direction is continuing. And we can go through the legal process, and hopefully we can do something in the legal process quick, because regardless, they're not stopping. So the goal that I would like to see walking away tonight is a plan to cease and desist what they're doing right now, so we can stop them now. That has to be legally possible.
Through you, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I believe, if I understood it correctly, the way to do that is for us to give approval for our attorney to work with the building inspector, because he is the only one that really has the right to put any type of stop on anything. Is that correct, Greg?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Selectman Maroney is correct. As well-intentioned as the Board of Selectmen might be, there's a limitation to what their authority is. And so, they can't order the building inspector to do anything. But, you know, I would certainly think that he would, you know, heed the advice of the board with respect to how to proceed going forward.
And we're going to encourage the council to write a point paper that's going to give the building inspector some issues to look at and have him make a determination as to whether this project is suitable to go forward or not. Ultimately, though, it's going to go to the ZBA for the appeal.
Completely,
So-
but they'll be done building by the time that happens.
Well, not if the building inspector decides that the project should be held up until there is a decision made on it, okay?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
To the extent that, I hope that, and James, not just you, but everybody can appreciate the fact that this is likely going to take a legal course that may very well end up in a courtroom, depending upon what the advice of counsel is to the ZBA and the building inspector. And it would be unwise to compromise that to the extent that it would seem as any preconceived outcome of a legal review. That would not be helpful for any of us should this be in front of a judge. You know, I'm not predicting what the outcome will be, but I just hope you can appreciate that there is a procedural issues that have to take place, and the open meeting law has its value, but with regard to the advice that council has to provide to the Board of Selectmen and the building inspector and the ZBA, you know, that's very sensitive and and to the extent that council may provide an opinion that would help us in some way here, we can't compromise our legal position in this forum. Hope you understand that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Wood?
In the back room, I don't know if I said, this project is not a typical construction project. There's no foundation to make. They just pound those bases in, build the structure, and put the panels on it. So I've pointed out to council that it is extremely timely, because the further they get along, the more the economic hardship they're going to be able to claim, and that will make it a little more difficult. So our council realize, and the board realizes how timely this is.
Well, and we also realize as a neighborhood that moving forward does risk the chance of financial responsibility. But as a community, we should be facing the fact that a mistake was made and that we need to fix that mistake instead of live with it because we have the time.
First, we're going to try and rectify the issue right here, okay, one thing at a time, and this has the priority as far as we're concerned. So we're going to address this. Then we can take a step back, take a breath, and we'll take a look at maybe we need to change our procedures. Maybe we need to change some of our policies. Maybe we need to revisit that solar bylaw again to make sure that this issue doesn't crop up again. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you for is a little bit of trust and faith here, because we can't put all the legal issues on the table at this point in time.
I would say is all we're looking for is the same, Mike. And just to close, because I know there are some others that may want to say something, I'd just like to say one more thing, because there is a lot going on around this. And I think people need to realize one thing that is very unclear. The town of Carver gains absolutely nothing from this project. This is not a project that supplies us with any power, supplies us with any source of income, or supplies us with anything that changes our status in any way.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, James. People need to get more involved in their town government. They need to pay attention to what's going on, because what happens is you wake up one day and all of a sudden you have these huge taxes or enormous expenses coming down on you, and you say, how'd this happen? Well, it happened because you let it happen. You didn't get involved. You didn't pay attention.
Not
So,
this group.
I'm not chastising anybody, because you guys are out here.
Not this group.
You're exercising your rights, and we commend you for that. And, you know, we don't claim to have all the answers for everything. We don't claim to be right about everything, and sometimes we need to have our leashes tightened a little bit, get our attention, so. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add, or we
No,
want
sir,
to get some
thank
other
you.
speakers
I'd
up here?
just
Thank you
like to
very
say
much.
one thing. I think James took a big step forward. He's a member of the school committee, and we think we're busy here. The school committee members spend a lot of time going over budgets, and I shouldn't say
It's
this.
been
but-
busy, Jack, yeah.
We are busy here, Jack.
I'm
Don't
the
tell
one that
anybody
convinced them to
otherwise.
do it now.
Thank
Jack,
you.
they're gonna fire us if you tell them we're not busy. All right, do we have another speaker? Mr. Todd. State your name and address, please.
Yes, my name's Edward Todd. I live on 3 Great Meadow. What I want to say, November 4th, I went back to work. I'm a merchant marine. I go away for 4 months. While I was here, I was here with Miss Maroney at her campaign. One of the things I said to her was, I need you to represent me while I'm representing you overseas. That's all. I can't be here. I can't be on a board because I'm not here. But I'm over there protecting the country. You know. So
And we appreciate that, and let me tell you, Ed, we acknowledge that at every one of our meetings.
I've been doing it for 12 years. I go away for 4 months every time. So I'm away from my family. Now, the one thing that I want to say is, I said I left November 4th. When I left, there were houses going to be put in. I came back March 10th, and this is being put in. So I'm going away thinking, okay, I'm safe. We're going to have houses. I'm going to have new neighbors when I get back. But I didn't think my neighbors were going to possibly kill me or hurt me or have light coming through my windows. Because my bedroom faces where the project is, between 2 houses, because I can see through my bedroom window. I can see the construction vehicles. So I know what the one on 44 looks like with lights, whether or not they're motion censored or if they're on all the time. That's going to be one hell of a bright light.
You're talking about the security lights that would be necessary?
Security lights on
Yeah,
that they're proposing for security.
right.
Because, you know, I know that's what they're gonna put lights there. And I know one of the things I did on Saturday night, I went and walked up and down Great Meadow. When it was dark, it was really quiet. I mean, you could hear a pin drop, you know, and the stars were out. It looked really quiet and peaceful. How much longer am I gonna have that? You know, I moved here in 2004 because I like to live among quietness. When I'm out on a ship, that's what I do. I work on a ship. It's noisy all the time. When I come home, I like my peaceful neighbors. I know all my neighbors. I talk with all my neighbors, including the people that live right next door to this. So what I think all of us are saying is, especially me, because I can't always be here, that you need to represent us as a town. Okay? Nobody wants to attack anyone. You know, I know, Mr. Franny, you said that sometime with another project that not everyone was able to come forward and help. If I was home, I'd have been there.
I'm just trying to stress the fact that, you know, you're all here tonight for your neighborhood.
Right.
And there's other neighborhoods down the line that might
Right.
have a different type of problem.
and if I'm home-
We all have to be together.
If I'm home, I'll be there.
I said the same thing about the school project. We can't win it by one vote.
Right.
The community has to wrap its arms around it. That's what makes us a community.
Right.
Anything else, Ed?
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. I see a hand up in the back there. Please come on up.
Yeah, Rick, wasn't it?
Please state your name and address.
My name is Wendy Rocha. I work with, I live on 16 Leland Way in Middleborough, Mass. I just wanted to make 2 points of clarification. The first one is the grading permit that we had that was available for there was not for the removal of all those trees. That's just one point of clarification I wanted to make clear to everyone. And the second one is that we requested legal counsel to review this project before it got passed several times to the town. Not only during the bylaw process, but before it was passed through planning, conservation, and everything. I just want to make those 2 clarifications known. And I hope that you're making sure that we're getting looked at now and going forward in that sense.
We're listening, Wendy. That's why we're here tonight.
But it could have maybe been stopped before.
Thank you. Eric, state your name and address.
Eric Tobalski, 3 Leland Way. As I'm sure everyone on the board knows, my name's on the appeal before the ZBA didn't come here tonight expecting to really say anything. As Mr. LaFawn said, we don't want to put anything in jeopardy here. I'm just going to speak about the construction in general now. 50 acres, that is essentially all a construction site at this point behind my house. I knew that there was going to be some work going on in the short term on the earth removal project. 500,000 cubic yards, give or take, of earth to be removed. Well, when that's been going on, sorry for the size of the picture, I'll be sure that you guys get copies of these, but this is the water behind my home. Where they've done the work, it's turned green. It turns the water in my house green, gives it an odor. Every so often, I take a shower, I get a smell out of my water, I get green residue in my tub afterwards. Time to add some more salt to the water softener. I go downstairs today to do just that after I get out of work. What do I discover? I discover I have a big crack in my foundation from the floor to the top of the wall. This wasn't there about 2 months ago, the last time I put water in there. Salt in the water tank. What's changed? At this point, we've had more earth removal equipment back there. Not just the 2 or 3 pieces of equipment Bill Logan has. There's 9 pieces of equipment out there for Lopes doing their work. I take a look outside my house. Not only is the crack on the inside, it goes through to the outside. So I walk around the rest of my house. Another crack. Another crack. I don't know if it's all the solar project or what, but we've got 50 acres of construction going on back there, literally shaking my house to pieces. This has to be stopped. It's destroying my house. I don't know what else can be said besides that. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Eric, can you make sure that Elaine or Rick get copies of those pictures?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
This is going to be a sensitive point, but based on what, was it Misha? I'm sorry, on 16 Leland Way? I didn't quite get your name. Wendy. Oh, my God, am I getting deaf? Misha.
I even got it right, Helen.
I know. I'm losing my mind. I am so sorry. Would it make sense, in all due respect to K&P, to have another law firm do an opinion just based on what your concern was? Did I understand you correctly that?
The town to send it to K&P to get an opinion on the project before it was approved.
Okay.
That would have been through the planning board, so,
Okay.
yeah, at the time, but I don't, so.
Did that ever happen?
I would ask the gentleman from KMP if they've ever rendered an opinion on this. That may be the best.
Yeah.
No, we have never
Okay,
opined
so
on
it
this
just never
project.
happened. Okay,
That's
then
correct.
okay, thank you.
I would agree with you in principle, Helen, that had Copeland and Page been involved
Yeah.
at that point in time,
But if they,
there may be some compromise that we would like to avoid, but that's fortunately not the case at this point, at least. But
now, should I make a motion at this point to allow K&P the authority to work with our building inspector and ZBA in order to see what options we have, in terms of the time sensitivity of this all? If we get an approval tonight, then you could start working on that immediately.
Especially in light of what seems to be some safety issues.
Yeah, and beyond that, I would
Propping
ask
up.
for an immediate cease and desist on all of the construction activities out
Yeah.
there, not just on the solar project, everything on this 50
This is
acres. You see what
concerning.
it's doing to my
Yeah.
house. Don't have time to wait. It's gonna fall apart if we keep this up.
Dick, would that be earth removal, or is this all building
That-
inspector? or-
I
like
think
it's more
that
than just-
what Eric is referring to could involve the earth removal.
Right.
So
So we should
we
add
need
that.
to,
well,
I may be able to add something to this about Eric's concern lately about the property damage. I'm on the Eastwood Estates Association Board, and I have 2 other previous members that are on the board. When our development was first built, there was the 4 lots in Carver that still had not been built on yet. The previous board members gave permission through Marcus Baptiste for those houses to be built and for them to use our private road. Since our top coat wasn't done, as an association, we all determined that they're building homes for our new neighbors. Our top coat had not been done, so there was gonna be no damage. So there was a legal easement typed up, and supposedly there was a dollar exchange for this. Our board members signed it. There was supposed to be a bond paid by the development which we, to this day, cannot find this bond that was paid to Marcus Baptiste to protect our property and any damage that they did. They only had the permission to use that easement of land to build and to come, they only had our permission to come down Captain Hall Road onto the private property to build those 4 houses in Carver. They did not have the extended permission to use our road as they have been doing. Sue and I both had run-ins, so did Liz this past week, with the trucks from G. Lopes coming through for Billy Logan and the developers back there. They had a lead pickup truck, a big 18-wheeler with a flatbed with a big pickup truck coming right through the dirt road next to Eric's house, coming through Captain Hall Road. Sue was up at the bus stop at Captain Hall Road with the junior high kids, and one of the kids were almost hit by the truck that came through. She stopped them. She told them they did not have permission to come down our road and to use the dirt road, which they did. She told me what happened. 20 minutes later, I saw the truck coming through Captain Hall Road from down by Eric's house. So I ran out there with my phone ready to call the police and have this thing stopped. The driver of the truck from Lopes told me that they had talked to Barry the day before, and they had every right to come through there, which Marcus Baptiste had told us the day before that he talked to both Billy and Barry, and that they were not using the property and they were not coming through. So there's different stories that we're getting. But they still proceeded to come through Captain Hall Road. The driver assured me that this was the last time it would happen. So I went to work. Liz Frazier stopped by my house that morning before I left. She knew what was going on because we all keep in touch with what's going on. After I had left, the trucks came through again. Liz had confrontations with them again. So they're lying to us, saying that they're not using the road. They have no permission to use the road. We've been in contact with Middleborough. Sue went down there with our easement, talked to the developer, or the town planner there. He made phone calls to them that they are not supposed to be using it. But they don't listen to the rules. They don't follow the rules.
Can we get a copy of that
Yeah.
document, please?
Yeah.
Maybe if you could give that to Elaine or
Give me
Mr.
an
LaFawn.
email, I'll email you a copy too.
Yeah. That might be of some help.
But these, they don't follow the rules. That's our frustration. So I can see very easily how this has happened to Eric's house recently. And I don't know who's keeping an eye on all that earth removal back there and what exactly is going on, but you know from previous walking back there with us with the tires back there and everything else, that not everything is on the up and up.
Through the motion, then maybe we should add the earth removal in any necessary committees that K&P needs to speak with.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Future discussion. We still have some members of the audience that want to add something to this. So I saw a hand. Come on up, please, sir. State your name and address.
Andrew St. Germain.
Speak into the mic, Andrew, please.
Andrew St. Germain,
Okay.
17 Great Meadow Drive, Carver, Mass. I'd just like to add to the record as well, probably about 3 to 4 weeks ago when this construction started to begin, I had reached out to NSTAR because a lot of the trucks were coming through the easement, and I wasn't sure if it was NSTAR. And apparently, the construction company that was doing the work was illegally using a right-of-way and the property owner of 16 Great Meadow Drive's property to come in and out of the work zone. That was
Are
quickly...
you talking about the power lines right there that come right out the south,
Yes.
the Great Meadow?
That's correct.
Okay.
With that, there's been all sorts of debris in our street. The street's, newly paved, and it looks like it's deteriorating already. So our resource is gonna have to go to clean up the street, or is this something that we're gonna put the burden on the construction company as well? That's something that I'd like to see addressed.
Well, that's an excellent point, because we just paved that last year.
Correct.
And, I mean, for that to be torn up now, and plus if there's dirt all over the place and everything else, it needs to be swept, with the power sweeper and everything else, so.
Now, I'd like to see the town of Carver do everything in their power to shut this down. I'm at the point, I'm a new homeowner, 2 years in Carver now, and, this makes me want to move out of this town when I chose this community to raise my family. So,
Please don't do that, give us a chance.
so that's all I'd like to state for the record, is just that they're illegally using properties, and something needs to be done, and someone needs to take a closer look at exactly what they're doing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Andrew.
Sure.
Yes, sir. Michelle, you'll be next.
Dan Foran, 20 Brook Street. I think Mr. Franny and a couple other people mentioned that we need to pay attention to what's going on in town government in the future. The second speaker of the night, this young lady, is evident. The last speaker has owned a house in town for 2 years. I've owned a house in town for 1 year. So we're listening. We're here. we're looking for our future. This is a test. I used to live in Plymouth. I can see the Kingston mess. Look at the mess that Kingston's in. Then when I bought my house right off of 44 on Brook Street, I said, wow, look at Carver, Cole property with the solar panels. I haven't seen that in Massachusetts anywhere. That looks awesome. What a great idea. Put solar panels on the side of a highway. Now you get it in the back of a neighborhood. I'm a forester and I work in the area for electric company, and you see the mess that's over there. And just want to say that we're paying attention and the future's here. Young lady, myself, and the last speaker, young generation.
Dan, I want to thank you personally for being here tonight, especially you live quite a distance from the ongoing project right now. I think all these people appreciate your support and being here tonight.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle. Last but certainly not least.
My name is Michelle Cohen. I live at 3 Leland Way. As you saw tonight from Eric's pictures, my house is falling apart. We moved here 3.5 years ago with our daughter Lizzie, who's been to town hall more times than probably any other little kid in this whole town. And you all know her by name, and she hugs some of you. My biggest concern is every day she's looking out back and she says, look at what they're doing to my backyard. Look at what they're doing to our backyard. We had trees back there. She said, what are those tall things with wires? I have to explain to her, they're power lines. We didn't see those before we moved in. She's part of the future generation along with Lauren and the two gentlemen before. What kind of message are you sending to young families that want to move into town and bring business and bring, their families here to grow up? Eric and I, when we were looking all over the state of Massachusetts when we moved back here, said, you know what, Carver's a really nice town. We came down here, we looked at our property, we knew about the construction behind our house. We were okay with it because we were told cranberry bogs. That was fine. But an industrial project, we didn't sign up for that. We never signed up for that. And what this town has done has allowed an industrial project right in our backyard. My daughter is nervous to go outside to play because of those trucks that come down our street. And they don't come down very slowly. They come down and they're speeding sometimes. I can't let my 4-year-old, obviously I'm not letting her go out by herself to play anyways, but I can't even go 20 feet from her without worrying about a truck coming down my neighborhood and driving and hitting her. And she's nervous too. Her playground was supposed to be about 20 feet from where the project started. We fought that one. We fought hard for that one. And now she's seeing all this big equipment still in our backyard and across the reservoir. She wants to know why this is happening. And maybe one of you guys can explain it to her, or one of the members of the planning board can explain it to her and why this was approved, because I can't do anymore. I can't tell her anymore why all these trees are coming down, why somebody is messing up with her neighborhood. Because if you ask her, she owns everything. And you know what? I want to give her the world. And that's what we were trying to do when we moved here. And it's not happening anymore.
Thank you, Michelle.
Hello.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
name's Penny Martin. I live at 48 Great Meadow Drive. I bought my house on December 28th. It's a lovely neighborhood. I just wanted to say a couple things. I understand, and I think it's wonderful that everybody's here supporting each other. It's not in my backyard. I have ponds and bogs behind me, but if it was in my backyard, I'd want people to come forward and talk about it. I think the other point that I wanted to make is that Carver is going to be making groundbreaking decisions here with Copeland and Page. It probably will go to court, and if there can't be some kind of reasonable decision. But solar is so new to Massachusetts that, and to put it into a community, that whatever is being done here in order to try and preserve people's property and the community, it's going to be really an important step for Carver to move forward on. And I think it's really great that you've opened this up to the community and are interested in getting some kind of program in place to make everybody happy And solar power is the way of the future. And no one could have anticipated that this kind of thing could happen. You're trying to do the right thing and be green, and unfortunately it's happening, and it's going to need to take a small town of Carver to figure out where everybody else is headed with this type of program.
You're right on target. Right on target. Thank you for being here. I would like to ask if there is anybody that represents the developer out there in the audience. This is a public meeting, and we want to make sure, sir? Please come up to the microphone and identify yourself, and you have an opportunity to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, give him his,
My name is Matt Tiso, live at 66 Purchase Street. Kind of hit home a little bit today. There's obviously a bunch of signs out in the neighborhood, everyone opposing this. I'm one of the few, maybe the only one that agrees that solar power has to go somewhere. Obviously, there's a bunch of issues going on with, obviously, this gentleman's house deteriorating and stuff like that. Obviously, it needs to be done a little more cautiously, but I am for solar power, and like I said, it's going to be in someone's backyard. I'm just proud to say that Carver is going green in that way. Unfortunately, it hit home a little bit today because I had a few people driving by the house yelling at me as I was doing yard work. I had a lady enter my yard to address my sign, which obviously I put it out there. But like I said, I'm for it. Like I said, obviously they're not doing things correctly, but I'm still for the solar project as long as it's done appropriately. That's all I can say.
took a lot of courage to come up here and do that.
Thanks.
Thank you. I would just like to remind everybody, excuse me a minute, I'd like to remind everybody that, what made this country great is that we all have the right to speak up, speak our mind, okay? And nobody should be subjected to bullying or intimidation. In fact, as adults, we are now fighting that strenuously in the schools. So we want to set the example for our kids and not be doing that against each other, too. Okay? Mr. Todd, you have one more thing you want to add?
Yes, I would just like to say, I'm not against solar. I'm just against where it's being placed. No, none of us are. I mean...
We concede that. We acknowledge that. We're not
totally-
fighting you about that.
I totally agree with putting it on the landfill. I totally agree with putting it on the highway. Isn't there a landfill across from Quickies? Why can't they put one on there?
It's a good point.
I mean...
Somebody's probably
just-
looking at that, too, by the
Yeah,
way.
and I'm 100%, if I could afford it, I'd put 2 on my house to go green. But I don't need 4,200 of them near my house.
Okay.
That's all we're all saying.
Right.
Is we do support Go Green.
We hear you loud and clear.
That's what we're saying.
Thank you.
I think what you're saying is that you support it, but just be appropriately cited.
Does anybody have something else relevant to this issue that hasn't already been brought up before Mr. Ward says something? Okay, go ahead, Dick.
I think that the other issue here is what Eric and Michelle are bringing out, that we have to bring the Earth Removal Committee in here quick on this whole issue, because there may be more damage to your home from the earth removal stuff, equipment, as there is the tree removal equipment that's way over on that site. So I think, and I don't picture exactly, Michelle, where you're talking the roads, but I don't think those trucks are supposed to be going out there. Aren't they supposed to be going out around through the bogs?
They're supposed to, but there's a gravel road that is a property that Mr. McNeil and Billy Logan own in between my house and Heather Souza's house. And they put a usage road basically in there. It's a stone gravel road.
But
They've said, well, we own property here, so we can do whatever we want.
I know, but on the earth removal permits, we specify the road that they're supposed to use. So if they're in violation of the earth removal permit, then maybe the earth removal permit needs to get pulled.
the police station last week, and I was told that I had to come up with some proof of this, and I can't come up with that kind of proof off the top of my head. I don't have that power. I don't have those papers.
You saw it. That's proof.
Well, I was told by the Carver police that that was not proof.
Well, I will contact the chairman of the Earth Removal Committee, and we will call a meeting, okay? So anybody that would be willing to come to a meeting later in the week, we gotta do the 48 hours, okay? But I would like that committee to meet and hear what you folks are saying, because those are pertinent to that earth removal permit, and that is causing a problem in your neighborhood. So I think we gotta do something about that also. Okay, so I will check with the Earth Removal Committee chairman tomorrow morning.
Can I
Okay?
just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yep, no, I'm done.
Just one more thing, in the essence of time that you were saying that it's kind of futile that we figure something out immediately, I was told that those the project will be erected by the end of the week, the whole most of the project.
Thank you, Michelle. Anybody else that has something additional to add, not a rehash, please, of the same topics and information that we've already put out there? We have a motion in front of the board, and we have a second to ask our council to take a look at this issue and work very closely with Mr. LaFond, the building inspector. And simultaneously, Mr. Ward is going to, who is a member of the Earth Removal Committee, is going to get a hold of the chairman and to see exactly what we can do as this issue takes its course through the normal legal process. Eric, you might have some work to do on your ZBA appeal, okay? Yes, James? Sure.
It kind of plays towards the legal concept of this and possibly a factor. It was a 3-person planning board that approved this. It's a 5-member planning board. One of the members was ill and then passed away. Oops, excuse me, sorry about that.
Well, your wife's here.
Seventh inning stretch. Did the Sox win tonight?
They did. They sure did.
And one of the members was actively involved in FEMA and not able to be there for almost all of these meetings. So it was a 3-person vote. And one of those persons is a solar electrician. And if there was not an ethical non-disclosure form...
James, let me interrupt you, okay? We need to just keep this on the issue, all right? We're not here to throw darts. We're not here to throw...
I'm not trying to throw darts, but if only 2 people's votes were valid, that doesn't make a quorum for a valid vote.
Okay. That's a good point.
That was my point.
That's a good point.
If you remove that vote without an ethical disclosure form, then it's only 2 people, and that's not a quorum. Therefore, that vote is invalid.
Well, that's certainly something, that's a good point, certainly something Mr. Corbo can take a look at. Thank you. Anything else, folks? We have a motion, and we have a second, and can we read that motion again, just so we have?
Yes, make the motion to give our town council permission to speak with earth removal, ZBA, building inspector, and any other committee that they deem necessary to be able to find a solution for us to be able to do a stop and desist as soon as possible, if that's the way we can go, to come back with a solution as quickly as possible.
Greg, anything to add on that? No?
Nope, I think it's clear.
Okay.
Whether the project can proceed, that's under the
Under
current bylaws.
bylaws.
Under the
Thank you,
current
Elaine.
zoning bylaws,
That's
thank you.
That's why we have someone doing this.
Second motion.
How soon can we
I seconded it.
Mr. Ward with his discussions for tomorrow?
If I get a hold of, I'll call the chairman of that committee tonight, okay? If he can get in here and post a meeting tomorrow morning, okay, for 48 hours, what I need is a couple of you folks to give me numbers, and then I need you to have some people come to that meeting and tell the Earth Removal Committee what's going on with the transportation and the whole thing, the earth removal part of it, okay? And then we can proceed, hopefully, okay? So can I use Eric and Michelle as the contact people? And then when I know when the meeting is, they can announce it, and you can come to that meeting? Okay?
By law, we're required to give 48 hours notice to have a legal meeting, so.
So then by Thursday?
In the meantime, though, I want you to understand that there's gonna be other people working on these things beside Mr. Ward and the Earth Removal Committee. Mr. LaFawn's gonna be working on it with Mr. Corbo. So it's
hopefully
not
by
like
Thursday.
people are gonna be sitting around doing nothing on this.
Hopefully
We
by
understand
Thursday.
time is of the essence.
I'm gonna push for Thursday night, because tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock to Wednesday to Thursday would be 48 hours, right?
Yeah.
Okay? So hopefully we can go for Thursday night.
And Eric, you're gonna transmit all that stuff to Rick so that he has that in the event you get stuck in traffic coming from Cambridge or wherever, and, okay. All right, so we can make sure that the information gets in front of the Earth Removal Committee.
And bring the pictures.
Members of the board, anything else? Comments, questions, statements?
Did we vote on that motion?
We made a motion in a second, we haven't voted on it yet, we were giving everybody an opportunity to state their piece. Okay, hearing nothing else, seeing nothing else, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. All right, folks, work with us, and we're gonna work with you, okay? Thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, you gotta adjourn.
God bless.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn, we have a second, all those in favor, please